I stood in my hotel suite in Sedona, staring at my phone as it buzzed incessantly with furious messages from my mother, my sister, and relatives I barely spoke to. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the red rocks glowed in the Arizona sunset, but all I could see was the image Aunt Linda had just sent me. A photo from Piper's wedding. My sister, the bride, red-faced and tearful, arguing with her groom in front of 200 guests. The empty space where I should have been standing as maid of honor was glaringly obvious in every shot. My absence had apparently triggered a meltdown so spectacular that people were still talking about it hours later. "How could you do this to your sister?" my mother's text read. "You've ruined everything. Everything." I turned off my phone, set it face down on the marble countertop, and poured myself a glass of champagne. For the first time in my 32 years, I felt absolutely perfectly free. The heaviest weight I'd ever carried wasn't the 48 pounds I'd lost. The empty space where I should have been standing as maid of honor was glaringly obvious in every shot. And today, on Piper's wedding day, I'd finally let that weight go. But before I tell you how I got here, before I explain why I chose a luxury spa weekend over being my sister's maid of honor, I need you to understand something. My sister, the bride, red-faced and tearful, arguing with her groom in front of 200 guests. Hit that like button, subscribe for more stories about finding your own light, and drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my situation. Because trust me, you're going to want to weigh in on this one. Now let me take you back to where it all began. 6 months earlier, I was living what most people would call a successful life. But before I tell you how I got here, before I explain why I chose a luxury spa weekend over being my sister's maid of honor, I need you to understand something. Now let me take you back to where it all began. On paper, I was doing well. My name is Aurora Wynn, and I've spent my entire life being compared unfavorably to my younger sister Piper. But inside, I was drowning in a sea of inadequacy that my family had spent 3 decades filling drop by poisonous drop. Where she was bubbly and charming, I was quiet and analytical. Where she could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, I could do no right. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the one who gave and gave while others just took, if you've ever wondered whether standing up for yourself makes you selfish or strong, then this story is for you. It was a systematic pattern of favoritism, so blatant that even extended family members noticed, though none of them ever said anything. Where she was petite and blonde, I was tall and curvy with dark hair. Piper got the bigger bedroom, the better presents, the more attention. Growing up in our family's sprawling home in Portland, I learned early that love was conditional. When I asked for piano lessons, I was told we couldn't afford it, even though my request came first. When Piper struggled in math, our father spent hours tutoring her. Piper got the bigger bedroom, the better presents, the more attention. But the worst part, the part that carved itself into my bones, was the constant commentary about my appearance. My mother, Judith, had been a beauty queen in her youth, and she'd apparently passed all her looks to Piper, while I got our father's broader build and darker features. From the time I hit puberty, the comparisons began. It wasn't just sibling rivalry. Piper looked so lovely in that dress. Aurora, maybe something a little less fitted for you? If you just lost some weight, you'd be so pretty. The words became a soundtrack to my adolescence, my college years, my 20s. I learned to make myself small in every way except physically. I spoke less at family dinners. I stopped sharing my accomplishments. I wore shapeless clothes and muted colors, trying to disappear into the background while Piper shone in the spotlight our parents created for her. Even as an adult living hours away in Seattle, I couldn't escape it. Every phone call from my mother included a comment about my weight, my appearance, or my perpetually single status. Meanwhile, Piper cycled through boyfriends like seasons, each relationship hailed as potentially the one, while my lack of dating life was treated as evidence of some fundamental flaw. I told myself I was fine. I told myself I'd made peace with my role in the family. I threw myself into my work-earned promotions, built a career I was proud of. But deep down, I was still that little girl desperately seeking approval from parents who would never give it. Then came the engagement party. It was a Saturday in early May, and Piper had insisted on a lavish celebration at an upscale restaurant in downtown Portland. She'd been dating Grant Morrison for 18 months, a bland but wealthy investment banker who seemed more interested in his phone than in conversation. Meanwhile, Piper cycled through boyfriends like seasons, each relationship hailed as potentially the one, while my lack of dating life was treated as evidence of some fundamental flaw. The restaurant was decorated with thousands of white roses and fairy lights. Champagne flowed freely. Then came the engagement party. I stopped sharing my accomplishments. I arrived early not to help but to avoid being conspicuously late. I found a seat at a table near the back and nursed a glass of sparkling water, watching my sister's performance. She was good at this, at being the center of attention. She always had been. The speeches started around 7. Grant's father welcomed Piper to their family with genuine warmth. Our father James gave a short toast about his little princess finding her prince. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. And then Piper stood up. "I'm just so blessed," she began, her voice saccharine sweet. "To have such an amazing family, such wonderful friends, and now this incredible man who wants to spend his life with me." The crowd applauded. I clapped politely, my face arranged in what I hoped was a supportive smile. And then Piper stood up. More applause. I felt my face flush as heads turned toward me. I wasn't expecting this. Piper and I weren't close. We barely spoke outside of mandatory family gatherings. But refusing in front of 200 people wasn't an option. And speaking of family, Piper continued, her eyes scanning the room before landing on me. "I want to ask my big sister Aurora to be my maid of honor." "But Aurora," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, "I need you to do something for me first. The wedding is in 6 months, and I need my maid of honor to look perfect in photos. So I need you to lose at least 30 pounds. Maybe more. I mean, I don't want people saying the bride's sister is bigger than the wedding dress, right?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Nervous laughter from some, genuine amusement from others. I stood frozen, my champagne glass trembling in my hand. Every eye in the room was on me, watching my humiliation play out in real time. "Come on," Aura Piper pressed, using the childhood nickname I'd always hated. 6 months is plenty of time. And who knows? Maybe if you lose the weight, you'll finally find someone too. More laughter. My mother's voice cut through the noise. "Piper's right, dear. This could be a wonderful opportunity for you." My mother's voice cut through the noise. "Piper's right, dear." My mother's voice cut through the noise. "Piper's right, dear." A fresh start. A fresh start. I set down my glass with a hand that had stopped shaking, picked up my purse, and walked out. No dramatic exit speech. No tears. Just a silent departure that probably seemed like acceptance to everyone watching. Let them think I was running to the bathroom to cry. Let them think whatever they wanted. I got in my car and drove back to Seattle in a fog of rage and hurt so profound I couldn't even process it. When I finally walked into my apartment at midnight, I went straight to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. No tears. I got in my car and drove back to Seattle in a fog of rage and hurt so profound I couldn't even process it. Really looked. And something inside me cracked wide open. I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching. Personal trainers. Nutritionists. Transformation programs. Not because I wanted to fit into Piper's perfect wedding aesthetic, but because I wanted to prove something to myself. That I could change. That I could take control. That I was worth the effort. That I could change. Transformation programs. By the end of that week, I'd signed a contract with Lydia Price, a no-nonsense former athlete who specialized in sustainable lifestyle changes, not crash diets. "What are your goals?" Lydia asked in our first session, clipboard in hand. "To stop feeling invisible," I said. "To look in the mirror and like what I see. To be strong. Not to fit into a dress for a wedding." "Absolutely not." Lydia smiled. "Good. Then we have something to work with." The first month was brutal. My body, used to years of stress eating and sedentary office work, rebelled against the early morning workouts and carefully planned meals. I was sore in muscles I didn't know existed. The first month was brutal. But Lydia was relentless in her encouragement, and slowly something began to shift. I wasn't just losing weight. I was building strength. Muscle replaced fat. My posture improved. I slept better. My mind felt clear. For the first time in years, I actually liked my body for what it could do, not just for how it looked. Meanwhile, my family's harassment escalated. Piper called weekly to check on my progress, each conversation peppered with passive-aggressive comments. "You know the bridesmaid dress is a size 6, right? That's pretty small. Are you sure you can do this? I showed Mom your Facebook photo from last week. She said you still look the same. Are you even trying? Grant's groomsmen are all really good looking. It would be embarrassing if you're still heavy at the wedding. Just saying." The text messages were worse. My mother sent photos of bridesmaid dresses in increasingly smaller sizes, always with a comment like, "Just booked your fitting for a size 4. Don't let me down. Never mind that I'd never agreed to any of this. Never mind that I hadn't said yes to being in the wedding at all. Then Piper showed up in Seattle unannounced. It was a Wednesday afternoon in July. I was in the middle of a budget presentation when my assistant knocked on the conference room door. "Your sister is here," she said, looking uncertain. "She says it's urgent." I excused myself and found Piper in the lobby looking perfectly put together in designer athleisure holding a pink bakery box. "Surprise," she chirped. "I was in town for a spa appointment and thought I'd bring you your favorite cupcakes. Red velvet with cream cheese frosting, remember?" I remembered. Red velvet cupcakes had been my weakness for years. The fact that she'd brought an entire box felt less like sisterly affection and more like sabotage. "I can't, Piper. I'm working." "Oh, come on. Just one won't hurt. Unless you're doing one of those crazy diets where you can't have any fun." She opened the box, releasing the scent of sugar and vanilla. "These are from that place you used to drag me to every time I visited. $3.50 each. I got a dozen." I understood the game. If I ate one, I'd be failing at the weight loss she'd demanded. If I refused, I was being ungracious and making her feel bad for her kind gesture. Either way, she won. "Thank you, but no," I said firmly. "I need to get back to my meeting." Her smile faltered for just a second before snapping back into place. "Suit yourself. More for me, I guess." She paused at the door. "Oh, by the way, Mom and I are going wedding dress shopping next week. We'll send you photos. You know, for inspiration." After she left, I threw myself into my training with renewed intensity. Every condescending text message became fuel for another rep. Every passive-aggressive phone call became motivation for another mile. I wasn't doing this for them anymore. I was doing it in spite of them. By September, I'd lost 35 pounds. My body was lean and strong, my endurance better than it had been since high school. But more importantly, my entire mindset had shifted. I'd started seeing a therapist doctor. I wasn't doing this for them anymore. I was doing it in spite of them, Chen said in one of our sessions. The body shaming, the public humiliation, the constant criticism disguised as concern. That's not love. That's control. "But they're my family," I protested weakly. "That doesn't give them the right to treat you as less than human." "You know that, right?" I did know it. I'd always known it. I just hadn't been ready to admit it. In early October, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I cut my long, dark hair into a sleek, shoulder-length style and dyed it platinum blonde. Not the warm honey blonde that Piper sported, but a striking, icy platinum that looked almost silver in certain light. I bought new clothes that actually fit my transformed body pieces that made me feel confident and powerful instead of invisible. When I posted a photo on Instagram, the response was immediate. Friends and colleagues flooded the comments with compliments. "Stunning. Gorgeous transformation. You're glowing." My phone rang within minutes. Piper's name flashed on the screen. "What did you do to your hair?" she demanded, skipping any greeting. "I changed it." "Do you like it?" "Are you insane?" "The wedding is in 2 months. That color is going to clash horribly with the coral bridesmaid dresses. You need to dye it back. Now." "No." The single word hung in the air. I'd never just said no to Piper before. Never refused a direct demand. "Excuse me." I said no. "I like my hair. I'm keeping it." "Mom," I heard her yell even though she wasn't talking to me. "Mom Aurora dyed her hair platinum, and she's refusing to change it back. I'm keeping it. The wedding is in 2 months. That color is going to clash horribly with the coral bridesmaid dresses. Mom Aurora dyed her hair platinum, and she's refusing to change it back. It's going to ruin all the photos." "No." I changed it. Platinum doesn't fit. I'm being selfish. I was publicly humiliated at Piper's engagement party, pressured to lose weight, and now I'm supposed to change my hair color to match a color scheme. There was a scuffling sound, and then my mother's voice came through sharp and cold. "You're her sister. You're supposed to support her. I've supported her my entire life. I've stood in the background while you two shined. I've accepted every criticism, every comparison, every cruel comment. I've made myself smaller in every possible way. I'm done." My mother's voice turned icy. "If you show up to this wedding looking like that, you will humiliate this family. Then maybe I won't show up at all." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but it was from adrenaline, not fear. I'd just stood up to my mother. I'd actually done it. The calls and texts intensified over the following weeks. My father tried the reasonable approach, asking me to just compromise and think about family harmony. Distant relatives I barely knew suddenly had opinions about my hair color. Piper sent me daily photos of the bridesmaid dress, each message more manipulative than the last. This dress cost $600. We already ordered it in your size. Grant's family is flying in from all over the country. Don't embarrass us. I guess you never really loved me. A real sister would do this one thing. But I held firm. Doctor. Chen helped me craft responses that were short and non-negotiable. I will not be changing my appearance. This conversation is over. Then I'd stop responding. The final family gathering before the wedding was a dinner at my parents' house in early November, ostensibly to meet Grant's extended family. I debated not going, but some masochistic part of me wanted them to see what I'd become. Not the weight loss, though, that was significant. I wanted them to see the confidence, the self-assurance, the woman who no longer needed their approval. I drove to Portland on a Friday evening, my platinum hair styled in loose waves, wearing a fitted emerald green dress that Lydia had helped me pick out. It was elegant, sophisticated, and unapologetically attention-grabbing. I paired it with heels that made me 6 feet tall and a smile that didn't waver as I walked through my childhood home's front door. The reaction was immediate and visceral. My father, mixing drinks in the living room, looked up and nearly dropped the bottle of whiskey he was holding. Aurora. Grant, standing nearby with a group of his relatives, couldn't seem to look away. "Wow, you look amazing," he said before he could stop himself. Piper emerged from the kitchen in a cream-colored dress that suddenly seemed washed out in comparison. Her smile was plastic, her eyes calculating. "Well, well. Look who decided to play dress up. Did you get work done? You look so different. Older, maybe." "Just healthy," I said calmly. "How are the wedding plans coming?" Before she could answer, my mother appeared, her expression a mixture of shock and barely concealed fury. She looked me up and down like I was a stranger who'd wandered into her home uninvited. Before she could answer, my mother appeared, her expression a mixture of shock and barely concealed fury. "You really did it. I really did. It's going to clash with everything. The flowers, the decorations, the dresses. Coral and platinum don't go together, Aurora. Then it's fortunate I won't be in the photos." The room went silent. Even the background chatter from Grant's relatives died away. Piper's voice was dangerously quiet. "What does that mean?" I met her eyes, these eyes that had looked at me with contempt for as long as I could remember, and felt nothing but pity. Piper's voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm not going to stand next to you in a dress I didn't choose with hair I didn't want, pretending to be happy while you and Mom criticize every aspect of my appearance. I'm not doing it." "You can't be serious," my mother hissed. Piper's voice was dangerously quiet. "I didn't ask for any of it." "You can't be serious," my mother hissed. "You've spent 6 months treating me like a project that needed fixing instead of a person who deserved respect. You've made it crystal clear that my only value to this family is as a backdrop to make Piper look better. After everything we've done for you, all the money we spent on that dress, all the planning." Some of his relatives looked away. My father stared into his drink. Grant shifted uncomfortably. "You're just jealous. You've always been jealous that I'm prettier, that I'm getting married first, that people actually like me." "I'm not jealous, Piper. I'm done. There's a difference." I turned to address the room, my voice steady and clear. "I'm going to tell you all something that might shock you. The biggest weight I lost this year wasn't the 48 pounds of fat. It was the crushing burden of trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it. I've spent 32 years being the invisible daughter, the forgettable sister, the one who was supposed to be grateful for scraps of attention. I've bent myself into shapes I didn't recognize, trying to fit into a family that never made room for me." I looked at my mother. "You have 2 daughters. You've only ever cared about one. And you know what? That's your loss, not mine." I looked at Piper. "I hope you have a beautiful wedding. I hope you and Grant are very happy. But I won't be there. Because I finally love myself too much to let you treat me like I'm worthless." I grabbed my purse and walked toward the door. Behind me, Kaya's erupted. My mother's voice shrill and furious. Piper's voice breaking into sobs. Grant's confused questions. My father's ineffective attempts at peacekeeping. I didn't look back. The drive back to Seattle was the longest and shortest of my life. I cried, finally releasing the grief and anger I'd been holding back. But underneath the tears was something else. Relief. Freedom. The bone-deep certainty that I'd made the right choice. The next week was a bombardment of messages, calls, and emails. My mother sent a handwritten letter that alternated between guilt-tripping and genuine fury. You're destroying this family. How can you be so cruel to your own sister? This is the most important day of her life and you're ruining it with your selfishness. I will never forgive you for this. Piper's messages were more manipulative. Screenshots of the dress hanging in her closet. Photos of the wedding program with my name still listed. Voicemails where she cried about how I was breaking her heart. I forgive you, Aurora. It's not too late. Just apologize to Mom and everything can go back to normal. Don't you want to be part of this family? Distant relatives joined the chorus. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly cared deeply about my relationship with my sister. Aunts and uncles sent concerned messages about family obligations and not burning bridges. But there were other messages too. Aunt Linda, my father's sister, who'd always been kind to me, sent a text that made me cry for different reasons. Good for you, honey. I've watched them treat you like garbage for years. You deserve better. Don't back down. My therapist helped me process the flood of manipulation. This is called an extinction burst, Doctor. Chen explained. When you remove yourself from a toxic dynamic, the other parties often escalate their behavior to try to pull you back in. They're panicking because they're losing control. Stay strong. I stayed strong. Aunt Linda, my father's sister, who'd always been kind to me, sent a text that made me cry for different reasons. I set Piper's messages to mute. I crafted a brief professional email to my father explaining that I needed space and would reach out when I was ready. Then I did something radical. I booked a luxury spa resort in Sedona for the week of the wedding. $3,000 for 5 days of massage, meditation, hiking, and complete disconnection from the world. It was the most money I'd ever spent on myself at once, and it felt like the best investment I'd ever made. The Wednesday before the wedding, I sent a group email to my immediate family. It was short and to the point. I will not be attending the wedding. I wish Piper and Grant well, but I need to prioritize my own well-being. Please do not contact me this weekend. I'll be unreachable. Then I drove to the airport, turned off my phone, and flew to Arizona. Sedona was exactly what I needed. Red rocks glowing in the desert Sunday. Silent hiking trails where the only sound was my own breathing. Spa treatments that made me feel pampered and valued. Please do not contact me this weekend. I slept 10 hours a night. Please do not contact me this weekend. Silent hiking trails where the only sound was my own breathing. On Saturday, the day of the wedding, I woke up early and went on a sunrise hike. The trail wound through towering rock formations, challenging but manageable. At the summit, I stood alone in the early morning light and felt something shift inside me. Not sadness. Not anger. Just a profound sense of clarity. I'd made the right choice. Not just about the wedding, but about everything. I'd chosen myself. I'd chosen my mental health, my self-respect, my future. And it felt like the first real choice I'd ever made. That afternoon, while my sister was presumably walking down the aisle in Portland, I was getting a hot stone massage. That evening, while 200 guests were dancing at the reception, I was dining alone at an upscale restaurant, savoring every bite of perfectly prepared salmon. I turned my phone on Sunday morning, bracing for the onslaught. There were 87 text messages, 23 missed calls, and 41 emails. I ignored most of them. But Aunt Linda's message caught my eye. Oh, honey, you missed Kaida's show. Call me when you can. I called her from my balcony, watching the morning sun paint the rocks golden. Tell me, I said. Aunt Linda laughed, though there was no humor in it. Where do I start? Everyone noticed you weren't there, obviously. The empty maid of honor spot was pretty hard to miss. But Piper tried to play it off, said you were sick, family emergency, something vague. And everyone noticed you weren't there, obviously. Like really drunk. Everyone noticed you weren't there, obviously. Grant tried to calm her down, but she turned on him. Started yelling about how he'd been staring at your Instagram photos, how he'd complimented you at the dinner, how she knew he thought you were prettier now. Oh God. It gets worse. Started yelling about how he'd been staring at your Instagram photos, how he'd complimented you at the dinner, how she knew he thought you were prettier now. Said something about how Judith had created a monster by always comparing you to how Grant probably wished he was marrying you instead. Grant looked absolutely mortified. Half the guests were filming it on their phones. It was a disaster. I should have felt satisfied. Your mother tried to intervene and Piper started screaming at her too. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad that Piper's insecurity had poisoned what should have been a happy day. Some petty part of me wanted to feel vindicated. How did it end, I asked. Grant's family hustled them into a side room, sad that our mother's favoritism had damaged both of us, just in different ways. Your mother was crying, going on about how you'd ruined everything by not being there, which was rich considering Piper's the one who had the meltdown. Your father got Piper into a car. Wow. Aurora, honey, I'm proud of you. You did the right thing. That family has been toxic for too long and someone needed to break the cycle. I'm sorry it had to be you, but I'm glad you were brave enough to do it. We talked for another hour. She filled me in on the whispered conversations, the shocked reactions, the relatives who'd privately said they understood why I'd stayed away. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who'd noticed the years of unfair treatment. I just was the first one brave enough to do something about it. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my hotel room and thought about the future. I had no intention of reconciling with my mother. That relationship was done, finished, dead, and buried. Piper and I might eventually reach some kind of detente, but we'd never be close. My father, if he ever found the courage to stand up to my mother, might still be part of my life. But I wasn't holding my breath. I thought about posting something on social media. Some perfectly crafted message about self-love and boundaries. But in the end, I decided to let my absence speak for itself. The people who mattered already knew what had happened. The people who didn't matter could think whatever they wanted. I spent the rest of my time in Sedona hiking, reading, and planning. Planning the life I wanted to build. The friendships I wanted to cultivate. The boundaries I would maintain. The version of myself I wanted to become. On my last day, I stood on my balcony one final time and took a photo. Not a selfie. Just the view. Red rocks, blue sky, endless horizon. I posted it to Instagram with a simple caption. Sometimes the biggest act of love is choosing yourself. The comments started immediately. Friends offering support. Acquaintances sharing their own stories of toxic families and difficult choices. Women I'd never met telling me I'd inspired them to set their own boundaries. But the comment that meant the most came from an unexpected source. Jennifer, a junior analyst at my firm who I'd mentored occasionally, wrote, "I needed to see this today. My family is pressuring me to quit my job and move home to take care of my sick grandmother, even though I have 3 siblings who live closer. They say I'm being selfish for putting my career first. But watching your journey has shown me that it's okay to choose myself sometimes. Thank you." I stared at that comment for a long time. Then I wrote her a private message, inviting her to coffee when I got back to Seattle. If my story could help even one person escape their own toxic pattern, then maybe the pain of breaking free had been worth it. I returned to Seattle on Monday, with a clarity I'd never experienced before. My apartment felt different. Lighter. More mine. I went back to work, threw myself into a new project, and felt genuinely excited about the future for the first time in years. Over the following weeks, the fallout continued. My mother sent one final email, formal and cold, essentially disowning me. I read it once and deleted it without responding. Piper's messages grew less frequent, then stopped altogether. I heard through Aunt Linda that she and Grant were having problems, that the wedding meltdown had exposed cracks in their relationship that couldn't be papered over with expensive gifts and exotic vacations. Part of me felt guilty about that. But Dr. Chen helped me understand that Piper's relationship problems weren't my fault. I heard through Aunt Linda that she and Grant were having problems, that the wedding meltdown had exposed cracks in their relationship that couldn't be papered over with expensive gifts and exotic vacations. It just stopped you from being the scapegoat they could blame for everything else. That made sense. It had always been easy to blame me, the disappointing daughter, the jealous sister, the one who couldn't get it right. Chen helped me understand that Piper's relationship problems weren't my fault. I didn't know if she'd do the work necessary to change, and honestly, it wasn't my problem anymore. 3 months after the wedding, I was promoted to senior analyst. It came with a significant raise, a better office, and the respect of colleagues who'd watched me transform over the past year. At the celebration dinner, my team, through my boss, pulled me aside. "Whatever you've been doing this past year, keep doing it," she said. "You're more confident, more decisive, more willing to speak up in meetings. You've become a real leader." I thanked her, but internally I was marveling at the realization. Cutting toxic people out of my life hadn't just improved my personal well-being. It had improved my professional performance. When you're not constantly drained by people who don't value you, you have so much more energy for the things that matter. I started posting more regularly on social media about my journey, not in a preachy way, but just honestly sharing my experiences. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people reached out with their own stories of toxic families, difficult boundaries, and hard choices. I created a small online community for people navigating similar situations, a place where we could support each other without judgment. Jennifer, the junior analyst who'd reached out after my Sedona post, became a regular at our coffee meetings. She'd successfully set boundaries with her family, found a compromise that let her help her grandmother without sacrificing her career, and was thriving. Watching her grow more confident reminded me of my own journey. 6 months after the wedding, Aunt Linda called with news. Piper and Grant had separated. Not because of the wedding disaster, though, that hadn't helped, but because fundamental incompatibilities they'd ignored during their whirlwind romance had become impossible to overlook. Piper had moved back in with our parents, and according to Aunt Linda, the dynamic there was strained. "Your mother keeps asking about you," Aunt Linda said carefully. "She won't admit she was wrong, but I think she's starting to realize that she pushed too hard." "That's her journey," I said. "Not mine." "You're not interested in reconciliation. Not unless she's willing to acknowledge what she did and commit to real change." "I'm not interested in going back to being the punching bag just because Piper isn't available for that role anymore." Aunt Linda sighed. "That's fair. I just thought I'd mention it." I appreciated her trying, but I was firm in my boundaries. I'd worked too hard, come too far to slide back into old patterns. My therapist had warned me that toxic family members often try to reconnect during times of crisis, not because they've changed, but because they need their old dynamics back. I wasn't going to be that for them. As spring turned to summer, I kept building the life I wanted. I took up rock climbing, something I'd always wanted to try but had been too self-conscious to attempt when I was heavier. I traveled to places I'd only dreamed about, using the money I would have spent on countless family obligations that always left me feeling empty. I dated tentatively at first, then with more confidence. Not because I needed validation from a man, but because I was ready to let someone see the real me. The relationships didn't always work out, but they taught me important lessons about what I wanted and what I deserved. And every day I practiced the most important lesson I'd learned. The biggest weight you can carry isn't on your body. It's the expectations of people who can't celebrate your light because they're too busy trying to dim it to make themselves feel brighter. I'd spent 32 years trying to be small enough, quiet enough, invisible enough to fit into my family's narrow definition of acceptable. It had nearly destroyed me. Breaking free had been the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it had also been the most important. On the 1-year anniversary of Piper's wedding, the wedding I didn't attend, I posted a before and after photo. Not of my body, though, that had changed, but of my eyes. In the before photo taken at Piper's engagement party, my eyes were dull, defeated, desperately seeking approval. In the after photo taken on a recent climbing trip, my eyes were bright, confident, fully alive. The caption read, "1 year ago today I chose myself. I chose my mental health over family obligation." In the after photo taken on a recent climbing trip, my eyes were bright, confident, fully alive. I chose my future over their comfort. It was the hardest decision I've ever made, and the best. To everyone struggling with toxic family dynamics, I want you to know, you don't owe anyone access to you. I chose my future over their comfort. Family is supposed to lift you up, not tear you down. And if they can't do that, it's okay to walk away. The biggest weight we carry isn't the one we see in the mirror. It's the weight of trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it freely. I ended with a question. If you were in my situation, would you have gone to the wedding to show them your transformation? Or is walking away in silence, letting them stew in their own jealousy, the stronger move? And here's the real question. When is choosing yourself selfish, and when is it survival? The post went viral. Thousands of comments share stories from people who'd faced similar choices. Mental health advocates shared it. Therapists used it as a teaching tool. Magazines reached out for interviews. But the comment that mattered most came from Jennifer. "Because of you, I set boundaries with my family last year. This year I got promoted, started therapy, and moved into my own apartment. I'm happier than I've ever been. Thank you for showing me that choosing myself wasn't selfish. It was necessary." I read her words and felt something settle in my chest. Peace. Not the temporary peace of avoiding conflict, but the deep, lasting peace that comes from knowing you've done the right thing even when it's hard. The biggest weight I ever lost wasn't 48 pounds. It was the crushing expectation that I had to earn my family's love. And the day I let that go was the day I finally became free. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever wondered whether you're being selfish for choosing yourself, I want you to know something. It was the crushing expectation that I had to earn my family's love. And the day I let that go was the day I finally became free. You're not selfish. And sometimes survival means walking away from the people who are supposed to love you most. What expectations are crushing you that you never agreed to in the first place? And most importantly, what would happen if you finally chose yourself? Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. Hit subscribe for more stories about breaking free from toxic patterns and building the life you deserve. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button because these conversations matter. We need to keep talking about this, keep supporting each other, keep reminding each other that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. It's strength. It's the first step toward becoming who you were always meant to be.